Thank you very much. Bonsoir, for providing such information and throwing so much light on this issue of corruption and the way it relates to the breeding of conflict in our country. As someone who has worked in this area for, as you said, 32 years?
Yeah, 31, 32 years.
There are a few things I'd just like to throw out, ask whether you may have any idea that could throw further light on the issue that I'll be raising as a way of helping us do our work. Now, you'll recall that during the administration of President Doe, there was a proposal which was discussed in public about constructing a bridge that will run from the Jalatown across the Mesurado swamp and end up somewhere at a battery factory. My information is that government had concluded some arrangement with Yunus Brothers. I don't know for sure whether this arrangement was subject to vetting or whether it was an open process of bidding. But what I do know is that an arrangement had been entered into with Yunus Brothers, and that an advanced amount of $8 million United States dollars was paid to Yunus Brothers to begin the construction of this bridge. Unfortunately, the war came, and we have not heard anything of such. As someone who was involved in investigating corruption, did any such come to your attention? I understand my information also says that there are officials in government who accompanied Mr. Yunus to the Bank of Credit and Commerce, BCCI, had the check encashed, and some of them received some spin-offs, some payments. Did that ever come to your attention? Did that ever come up as a matter that may by chance have come to your desk? Or do you have any information on it that can help us further our investigation into this?
I'm sure you are referring to the proposed hanging bridge.
That's right.
That should have been the first hanging bridge in Liberia. From Crown Hill, from our church, across into the battery factory. I'm sure that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
That matter didn't come to us by documents for any probe, but we are aware a construction company, either Eunice or Joseph Brother, one brothers group, received payment upfront to have a hanging bridge from the Crown Hill curve across the Mesurado River to the battery factory, for which clearing was done. And all of the units behind that bridge, behind that factory, were paid for. All those structures around there, government paid everybody off to make way for the construction of that bridge. That took place just around 88, almost any 88 that deal went through. In the end, our situation set in, and I'm sure those guys were the first to flee the country, and nothing happened until they left the yellow machines and other things there when they left. That much I know. Yes, I know that government paid for that bridge. I also understand the government paid for the widening of the Somalia Drive from Freeport to the red light. That money also never returned to us.
Can you recall which company had been paid to do that enlargement of the road?
I will have to check up some notes, but I know the company was paid to do that road.
We would appreciate for you to provide us any additional information to follow our work.
Yeah, and you must note, lots of things went on. Perry Street, for example, the government paid every hamlet, every unit that were in its 150 feet radius on Perry Street to have that road straight into the main road. For some reasons, they made Perry Street as tiny as it is, and you can see some structures cut in half simply because they didn't want the structure destroyed. Congo Town bypass, government paid a lot of money there too to almost all the units there, PRC government, to have that special road straight to the TB annex. But again, there were influential people, corrupt people who bend the rules, and those projects never took place. So the bridge is not the only one. So maybe the TRC need to engage in a fact-finding program to see where are we and why are we where we are. Have the government paid for Perry Street for 2 lane, and officials of government there say no. Even the church that there was paid for. They should have removed all those things from that place and opened up Perry Street. They never did. So yes, that was not the only project the government paid for. They paid for a lot of other road construction projects that never took place completely.
Thank you. It will also be helpful were we to get a list of those officials and those agencies of the government that are responsible for the execution of that project as a way of furthering our investigation and uncovering the facts.
All right, I'll contact my friends.
Now, we sit a few yards away from a building that was under construction and never completed. I refer to the building right across the street, across Buchanan Street. That building was to be the new National Bank or the Central Bank. My information is that the building was, the cost of construction, completing that building was projected at $20 million United States dollars. My understanding is that a construction company, I think BAO, I'm not so sure, but its president or manager, Mr. Paliazeri, that this money was paid upfront, $20 million United States dollars was paid upfront for that building. The consulting architects at the time, Wallace and Wallace, certified that that building was completed and that payment should be done, and payment was done, I think through the Eurobank. That may have been the institution through which that payment was done. The Ministry of Public Works was to provide supervisory services, confirm whether the recommendation by the consulting engineers, Wallace and Wallace, was actually the fact. I understand that the Ministry of Public Works also acquiesced, though the arrangement to have the money paid up front, and that this money was paid, $20 million United States dollars. Till today, this money, the bank building has not been completed. You recall that there was a crane that was used to facilitate the construction of that building, and after the conflict broke out, the crane went into disuse, and eventually portions began to drop, caused some accidents, and I think it was the Chinese that eventually succeeded in dismantling the crane. During the period of your work, did any such information come by you? Or would you have any information that would suggest that yes, this money was paid? And would you know whether the payment was done through the central bank? At the time, I think the governor of the central bank, which was the national bank at the time, was Thomas DeVore Hansen. During the period of your work, spending the 32 years, National Force for Eradication of Corruption, Ministry of National Security, and all of that, did any such information come by you?
I can answer that question in this way. The PRC worked in a way, if an influential person in their midst had financial interest in a given project, that project went on in the twinkling of an eye. Just like the bulk purchasing scheme, because somebody influential in their midst had interest, they had no objection to that scheme. Just like the hanging bridge, because somebody would benefit, they had no objection. So many instances, they would pay up front. Once they knew that their interest would be protected, they would pay up front. So I'm sure you got your facts together, and you can see that this building is still here. But to say that that information came on my desk, no. But what happened, because of our interaction with the PRC fellows, from the Samuel Doe to the rest of them, every time we met to socialize, all these stories will come out and they will tell us. And by that way, we know some of the things we know today. Yeah, so I'm sure the TRC at your closing, you may just want to follow up on all these hanging developments and see whether they were paid for. Record will be somewhere. But the PRC did pay up front on most of their activities.
Thank you very much. Now, there's also the issue of the housing bank. As you know, a new proposed housing bank building stands on Ashman Street, near what used to be the former executive mansion. Our information suggests that substantial amounts of money was diverted from the original project cost into private coffers. Some went into the erection of other buildings around Monrovia. Did any such information come by you, or would you have heard of any such information during your years of work in anti-corruption activities?
No.
You said no?
No.
All right. Can you let me go to the LPRC? In 1980-1981, the Liberia Petroleum Refining Company had an oil facility arrangement with the Lombardi Group, Lombardi, L-O-M-B-A-R-D-I. And they were supplying fuel or crude oil to the LPRC that it will refine, sell, make profits, and then pay off this facility. And this oil facility was arranged through the National Housing and Savings Bank. Our information shows that during the term of the PRC, this arrangement, payment arrangements, the PRC reneged on payment arrangements to the Lombardi Group. And the Lombardi Group subsequently withdrew, prompting the LPRC and the National Housing and Savings Bank. I do not know for sure whether the money owed to the Lombardi Group was ever liquidated or not. I'm not so sure of that, and I cannot recall the final details. But however, a new oil facility arrangement was reached with the Red Mountain Finance Corporation, based, I think, in Oklahoma, United States of America. Again, those are details that I'm not so sure of. I'm talking about the location of this, but I do know it was the Red Mountain Finance Group. And the value of that oil facility arrangement was 50 million United States dollars. And as you would know, the National Housing and Savings Bank, which remains closed today, owing particularly to these loan arrangements that made the bank insolvent, but this bank was a depository for many people, common people that is, marketeers, I myself, others had money savings in that bank. The bank became insolvent. Today, depositors were left with their hands outstretched and received nothing. But the point is that this oil facility arrangement reached with the Red Mountain Finance Corporation. Again, government reneged on the arrangement, and the Red Mountain Finance Corporation pulled out. During that period, depreciation was rising rapidly on the facility in Gardnersville, the oil refinery. And because the LPRC had become insolvent, although we know today that the LPRC is making a lot of profit, but because the LPRC became insolvent, and more or less the National Housing and Savings Bank was in a state of near insolvency, the government at the time organized the Liberian National Petroleum Corporation, organized principally through the instrumentality of Mr. Emmanuel Shaw and Mr. Jenkins K. Zebby Scott, playing key roles. We know that the LNPC, defunct now, inherited the assets, the fixed assets of the LPRC, the refinery, the oil jetty, the oil storage facilities. And although it inherited the fixed assets of the LPRC, it did not inherit the liabilities of the LPRC. Can you provide any information as to the legality or illegality of such an arrangement that was entered into? And the profits made by LNPC, were they deposited into government coffers or did they go into private coffers? That's the first part of my question on the LPRC I would like to pose to you.
I'm sure you will appreciate that all of the scenarios you're giving were all carried out on a military junta. Now these people did not go for too much of the rule of law. The situation you explained did take place, yes, and I'm glad you mentioned the brother Emmanuel Shaw's name. He is perhaps the most knowledgeable person in Liberia on that entire transaction. You must also appreciate the PRC worked in a way that, for example, some of the situations you are citing were considered classified. Those were classified information that will not just get down to ordinary people like us unless we had to be involved. But on the surface, yes, we are aware that an LPMC was created, LMPC was created, and Emmanuel Shaw headed it. As to the financial dynamics and transactions, no, I will have no knowledge. But Emmanuel Shaw will be the right person and whether those entities were created through acts of law or created by PRC decree or just created on sentiments, I won't know, but you should understand that the PRC was a military government. Anytime these guys decided they wanted something done and their interests were involved, they got it done.
Thank you very much. On the second part of my questions concerning the LPRC, your answer does not give me the impression that the debt owed by LPRC as a result of this arrangement was ever liquidated or not. Anyway,
because,
I say you don't. Maybe
yeah, I can understand where you come from, because I'm sure you want me to tell you what I know for sure and can say tomorrow, can say day after tomorrow, can say 5, 10 years from now. Those arrangements, yes, we heard about them. What I have spoken of here today are issues that I handle or that I supervise, for which I remember dates and documents. The PRC, yes, they work as a military unit. And so such a transaction of that nature, people like us would have never known, it would have never come to us. It would stop at the level of the bank president, the finance minister, the NRC chairman, and that kind of thing. Those were privileged information, and they never came my way.
Now, further to my concerns about the LPRC, there was an arrangement against the background of insolvency of the Housing and Savings Bank, and the debt hanging over the LPRC. It is my information that the LPRC, the Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance, absent the National Housing and Savings Bank, entered into an agreement. And that agreement was done in order to make, from my understanding, was done in order to make LPRC solvent again and free of debt. And my understanding and my information is that under the arrangement, all of the money owed by the LPRC through the Housing and Savings Bank, which served to guarantee the loan backed up by the Central Bank, that all of such liabilities owed by LPRC to the Housing and Savings Bank, and by extension, the National Bank or the Central Bank, was transferred onto the government of Liberia's debt portfolio, public debt portfolio. Now, I'm not talking about the debt incurred by public corporations, which stand, though it may be reflected as part of our national public debt, and that all of this was written off LPRC books, transferred onto the national public debt portfolio, and that amount, however, was never transferred from the books of the National Housing and Savings Bank, and the bank remains insolvent today, and that in return, For such an arrangement, the governor of Liberia, through the Ministry of Finance, will receive an amount of $400,000 United States worth of petroleum products per year for a period of 10 years. Did any such information come your way as an investigator looking into issues of corruption and crime? Did any such information come by you, or would you know of any such information?
That would have been privileged information at that time, because you must understand that by 1985, as I said, we were not involved anymore with going into economic crimes, but rather we're now with the Ministry of National Security. And therefore, you got your statistics right. Those situations did obtain, but they were strictly financial matters that had key or point people handling them. And as long as everyone got the share of such arrangement, you who have never seen the document in your capacity as an investigator unless where you are sitting now. All of those information are privileged information that did not come across our desk.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Owing to time constraints, let me stop here, but rest assured, our engagement shall continue as we try to unravel details concerning some matters which to us still appear cloudy, so that we may have this reflected in our final report. So let me thank you very, very much for such insight, and look forward to continued cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Francois Junius, we want to thank you very much for coming to the Commission today and sharing all of what you have shared with us. You've brought your personal experience, your professional experience to bear on this process. And I must assure you that you contributed immensely to our investigation and understanding of the nature of economic crimes and corruption as it exists in our national polity today. So thank you. Your presentation and testimony has just come to a close as we have exhausted our questions. If there is a last word you want to leave with the Commission and the people of Liberia, you may do so now. Otherwise, we say thanks very much for coming.
All right, let me just say thanks for giving me an opportunity. And I hope in a very small way, I've contributed to what you're doing here. And by all accounts, all I've done, I try to rub in some of the things maybe people have not actually heard. And everything that I've testified to are situations at the time that were under my direct supervision that I handled or that I participated in. And if by chance anyone feels I've said something not correct, I stand corrected, because I'm giving a story that took place 25 years ago. So I want to thank you and urge the government, all of us, that corruption is the contributing factor for war. We should do everything we can to ensure that we put in place mechanisms to address the issue of corruption and economic crimes in our society. If we don't, we'll have people guessing or surmising that corruption is uncontrollable now, and therefore they should take issues in their hands. I want to thank all of you, and those information are left out. I will do my best to fast track them, see whether I can get them to you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Junius. You may kindly leave.